Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide. Well, in today's video, we are taking an in-depth review look at the Huawei's MatePad Paper. I have here the white version that I ordered myself. This is only for the Chinese market, so if you're looking to buy this device in the Western market, the only one that you're going to be able to see is the black version. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And also, no one sent me this device. I actually purchased this one. And the only reason why I am able to do these things is because of your support. So clicking like and subscribe really does matter a lot and does help the channel grow. And if you do like the work that I do, I invite you to check out the shop link at mydeepguide.com/shop, where you can find the latest version of My Daily Organizer 2023. That's a nice hyperlinked PDF file that can cover most of your yearly, daily, weekly, monthly organizing needs. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in checking out and you want to help out the channel grow more, check out the MDO 2023. And now, onwards with a review of the MatePad Paper. And here is the Huawei MatePad Paper. This is a 10.3-inch e-ink screen tablet from Huawei. While it does, technically speaking, run on Android underneath it, it doesn't have a Google Play Store, and it's actually running a dedicated version of it called Harmony OS. The main purpose of the device like this is basically, that's the question. It's like, is it a tablet replacement or is it a dedicated reader or a note taker? In my experience during the testing of this device and actually using it for the past month, I think that this device actually is a note taker primarily and a meeting companion primarily, and it can do some document reviewing and maybe some reading as well. As far as replacement for a tablet, that's a different story, as you will see throughout the review, because some things it can do well, some things are going to be limited, mainly due to the nature of the Harmony OS and the absence of the Google Play Store. It is priced at 499 euros or 500-ish dollars and euros, and that is like right smack in the middle of the price of the Note Air 2, Note Air 2 Plus. Supernote is a little bit above that when you actually account for all of these things. So yeah, if you're buying it in Europe, then you can get it from their Germany site, but only the black version is going to be available. I got this one actually from AliExpress. So this is a Chinese version for Chinese market, and I was able to actually just change the OS, as you'll see, and use it in English for the most part, but it's not all translated, so you will have some Chinese elements of the OS left here and there. So it's not a full experience, and it's not the same thing if you buy it from a European dealership or from China. I wanted to check out this white version because that's what I really preferred, but yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind. When you order it, you get the normally it's packaged with this flip book cover, magnetic flip book cover. So you get the flip book, you get the device, and you get the magnetic pen with it and a charging cable. So basically you get everything that you need to start using this device as you normally would. The design of MatePad Paper is actually quite nice. So it's running that standardized one edge is a little bit wider type of design. It is fairly thin. On the front, one of the signature things for the design is this kind of 86-point-something% screen to body ratio, which is actually quite nice. So you really don't have much around the edges here. And it is definitely a selling point for traditional tablets. But my question would be, is that a valid selling point for a note-taking tablet and a tablet that you want to hold in your hand? So yes, you do have this one side wider, but this side here, you got to be actually very careful because accidentally you will touch the screen. So that's not going to be a big deal for some people, but it's something to definitely keep in mind. The device is mostly made out of plastic, and it does have a metal side. I believe that would be an aluminum side. So you have this aluminum frame that runs through here as well. It's a plastic top. This feels like glass. I believe it's glass, I'm not entirely certain. And then from this edge you have this kind of faux skin type of a material that rounds around the back and goes through the entire side of the back of the device. On the back you have your Huawei logo and device ID stuff, and that's pretty much it. The material on the back is actually very nice, and it doubles as anti-skid material, plus it feels good, like a nice notebook or something like that, and it provides for a good firm holding here, so it's very, very nice and comfortable. It's not a heavy device. It's actually very, very light at 360 grams. I think it's one of the lightest 10.3-inch e-ink devices out there, and that's definitely a nice thing to kind of feel. And also its footprint, because of that very, very small margin on the sides, it's actually very, very comfortable to use. So it's mainly a screen. You have a little bit of a width here, and that's pretty much it. As far as hardware buttons and layout goes, on the top we have one of the speakers, and we have a power button that also doubles as a fingerprint reader. On the side we have a volume rocker, which can be used as buttons for previous and next pages in documents and notebooks. On the bottom we have a USB-C, another speaker, and I believe there's a microphone there as well, or the microphone is maybe on top, not sure, and nothing on the other side of the device. The manufacturing is very nice and precise, and the use of materials also works really well for the device itself. Everything's pretty much precise, and it feels good, and it does look rather good. Now, one thing that I have noticed is that I don't know how much that's going to translate here, but maybe you can see it, maybe you can't. However, there is a small lift in one of the corners, and there's another lift here as well, and the device is not perfectly flat. And when you do take a look at it from the side, you'll see that there's a slight bend over here at the end, and there's a slight bend here from the middle, like a consistent bend. That is something, as far as twisting and turning, it's fairly rigid and it's kind of good, so that's okay. But this is not actually okay for a $500 device. This is something that I have seen, for example, in Remarkable 1, which was also an all plastic device, and Supernote 5 is an all plastic device, and you could see a little bit of it, but not to this extent. And this one is not all plastic. This one actually has a metal frame around it and a reinforcement here, and I would have expected that this device would not have such issues. So the build quality, while nice and the materials are okay, it could be better and it could be a little bit tighter. The design I overall like. Ergonomic side of it is good, but this really narrow margin on the side, or the bevel, is actually a bit of a problem when you want to deal with these things and basically use it as a reader. Then you have a little bit of a thing and you will have some accidental presses, or at least I had it. But overall, build quality could be better. Design I overall very much like. Cover is a nice kind of flip book cover. This is not like a case that's going to protect your device fully, but it's fairly okay made, and as a flip book cover I think that it works okay. On the outside it's fairly smooth and almost kind of something between a rubber and a leather thing, and on the inside it's not plushy or anything. You have that similar type of material, but it's a little bit more rougher, kind of rigid, and that's okay. It has a fully magnetic surface here, it has a magnetic cover there, and it also has a small magnetic here for auto wake up and shutdown. The magnets are aligned and polarized in such a way that the device can simply slot into it and be held by the magnets themselves. So you simply put it like this and it just gets into the place. Now, as far as the strength of these magnets, well, can you lift it up? Oh, you can, but you better do it very, very carefully, because even the slightest movement will turn it around, and the test for me is, can I turn it around and flip it around? Very, very barely. So the magnets are nice and they will hold the device on the side. So like this, it's actually quite strong when I'm trying to shake them, but they will let go at some point. This is not a full-on protective case. This is simply a flip flipbook cover with a wake up and sleep functionality. The flap here that actually holds the pen as well in place is also magnet, and it kind of holds nice and tight, and it's super shiny, and it has a Huawei logo on it. Some people may like that, some people may dislike it, but it is nicely made, and it will be always smudgy and full of fingerprint. One thing that's really good is that you can, unlike on Boox Note Air series, you can charge your device while it is in a protective cover. But what is bad is that there are no stand functionalities that double with this cover, so you cannot use it as a vertical or as a portrait or a landscape stand. This is simply a flipbook cover, but it does flip to the back and it holds magnetically, which is nice, and it's fairly easy to actually get the device out of it and in it into the default position, and as an overall package it does look good. As far as the specifications go for the MatePad Paper, it is a very well equipped tablet overall. At the heart of it is an octa-core Kirin 820E CPU. It is boosted by 4 GB of RAM and 64 GB of non-expandable ROM capacity. At the front you have the 10.3-inch e-ink screen running the standard resolution and a density of 227 ppi, and a battery with a capacity of 3625 milliamps. It has all the standard connectivities such as Wi-Fi, both 5 GHz and 2.4 GHz. It has Bluetooth. It supports OTG, current and storage capabilities. It has an accelerometer, so that allows for automatic rotation. 4 microphones located around the device that actually perform really well when capturing your audio memos or whatever it may be while taking notes. 2 speakers located at the top and the bottom, which give you a nice stereo picture when you're looking at the device and reading in landscape mode. And all of it is powered by Huawei's Harmony OS 2. Another thing that's also notable for this design is that the screen to body ratio is really high at 86.4%, giving you quite a lot of screen real estate at a very small footprint for an overall device. And that means that the dimensions are smaller than your usual typical 10.3-inch e-ink Notetaking tablet. It measures at 225.2 millimeters height, 182.7 millimeters width, and depth of 6.65 millimeters. And because of the way it's built, the material used, and smaller overall footprint, this means that this device is only 360 grams heavy or light. Very nice and portable. Overall, throughout working with the MatePad Paper, I have never once encountered an opportunity or a case scenario where I felt the device was underpowered in any way. So the specifications, they're really up there, and anything that you actually throw at this device, it's able to handle it without any performance issues. With the device, you get their new pen. Everything except the nib is made out of metal, and it's a beautifully brushed aluminum that actually feels very nice in the hand, and it's not too slippery, and it also has this important indentation here on the side, so that because the pen is magnetic, it can fit to the curve of the device itself. You see the edge is curved, and therefore the pen also has that curvature so that it can fit and be held on the device properly. So the magnet holds pretty good. Let me shut him down. And you really need to get to a point, there we go, like unreasonably a lot of shaking needs to be employed to actually get that pen to get off the device. Can you pick up the device via the pen and magnet itself alone? Let's see. Yes, you actually can, and it holds it pretty much okay, even side to side. Now, if I were to violently rock it up, it would probably let go. But the combination of 360 grams and a very strong magnet here is a nice combo, and that actually holds this pen fairly securely in by your device. The ergonomics of the pen are very nice. It is an active wireless charged pen, so it is charged by the device when you attach it next to the device. So while it does have a battery, it doesn't have have any cables or ports or anything like that. That means that the balance of the pen is actually really good, and it feels very nice in the hand itself, despite it being metal. However, because it is metal, it is something that it's a harder surface, so after a prolonged period of writing, you will kind of feel it, and I do feel that it's a little bit tougher on the hands and a little bit harder naturally because it's metal than other pens that I'm used to, which are actually made out of plastic, which is softer and a little bit more forgiving. The build quality of the pen is really stunning and gorgeous, and it really does feel premium. This one is mostly comfortable, so it works okay. The only problem that I had was like after an extended period of writing, so when I was testing the battery for writing, so after about half an hour, my wrist and fingers started to kind of hurt a little bit, which is normal for pens that are not uber comfortable, and this one is comfortable but not uber comfortable. The tip itself is something that you unscrew, kind of like we have with Apple Pen, and this kind of nib. You have another one available with your device. I don't know how long it will take for these to wear out, but they're not wearing out that quickly, and they're wearing out much more slowly than the equivalent soft nibs that we have on other devices. You'll notice that it doesn't have a physical button or an eraser here, but that doesn't mean that this is just a pen. It actually has a functionality where you simply double tap anywhere around here. You just double tap it and the device will detect that, and it will perform a function that you define, and you can switch several different things, but basically you can either double tap and then choose to erase, or double tap and use as a selection tool, or anything like that. So you do have that kind of button functionality. Now, this being an active pen, this means that you cannot use standard Wacom EMR pens on the MatePad Paper, so you are stuck with this one. The connecting between the pen and the device is actually done fairly easily. So during the initial setup, it automatically, when you first snap the pen onto the device, it will ask you, hey, do you want the Bluetooth pair it? And that's pretty much it. And after that, you will notice that when you snap it on, the device says, hey, this is how much power you have, and then it will power it via the power of the devices. So that part works really well. Now, what about the writing feel and writing comfort? Well, I talked about the writing comfort, and the writing feel is surprisingly good. So I'm going to demonstrate that. Double tap, it switches automatically to an eraser. I erase this, double tap again, and it switches there. So I can continue writing, right? And you can see that the latency is fairly quick. This is a very quiet pen. You don't have any kind of raspy, papery sound like you do on, let's say, Boox Note Air 2 and a Remarkable and Remarkable 2. But there is a paper-like surface on top of the screen itself as a film, and you do get a surprisingly pleasant feel when writing. Furthermore, the pressure sensitivity is really finely calibrated, so you can actually see that if I pump it up to the maximum, and let's just start very fine and thin lines, and as I gradually increase the pressure, it gradually also increases the thickness here, depending on which brush it is that you are using. So the quality of the pen is exceptionally good, definitely very nice and very nicely designed. So the overall summary of the pen is that it's exquisitely nicely built, excellent build quality, very nice design. It is quite good and okay as far as comfort goes for use. It has a surprisingly better writing feel than I would have expected initially because of this type of a system. So it actually feels very nice to write on, has that added functionality of a double tap, has an excellent strong magnet that snaps and holds onto the device really well, and it is also wirelessly charged via the device. So fairly comprehensive set of features in the pen itself, and it does perform rather well. As mentioned before, Huawei MatePad Paper has a battery of 3625 milliamps, and while that on paper doesn't sound like a lot, Actually, the efficiency at which this whole hardware and the OS are functioning means that it's really capable of extracting the maximum out of that battery. And the battery performance on the MatePad Paper is very, very good. So as standard, I do the regular battery testing. First is the reading test with the Frontlight at around 30% and Wi-Fi turned on. And then I manually tap and flip pages for an hour, and that's basically 3 pages per minute. Every 20 seconds I flip a page, and that is done consistently through an hour. And the results are very, very impressive because in an hour it spent around 1.5% of battery, maybe even a little bit less, which actually means that with the Frontlight at 30% on, and it's highly unlikely that you will ever want to pump it up more than the 30%, you get an estimation of around 67 plus hours per single charge. And at that point I felt that it was completely unnecessary to spend another hour of flipping pages without the Frontlight on, because even with the Frontlight on you get a really stellar battery performance. So that just means that without the Frontlight you get even more battery performance, which is really, really good. Now the second test is continuous note-taking for 1 hour. Frontlight again at 30%, Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth off in both of the tests. And since note-taking is a much more processor-intensive task because it involves firing up all the cores, and the primary performance core works at a higher clock, that means that the highest consumer in that mode is going to be actually the CPU and the system, not the screen. So the Frontlight, when note-taking, doesn't really matter that much. And in that mode, MatePad Paper was spending around 8% of battery per consistent 1 hour of note-taking. That's without taking any breaks, which actually translates to around 12.5 hours per battery charge. And that again is very, very impressive for a battery of 3625 milliamps. Pen itself is also battery charged, and while I was writing for 1 hour, it spent around 9% per 1 hour, 8 or 9%, not really sure because it was like on the fence. But that means that the performance of the device and the pen battery consumption is roughly the same. So it's not going to happen that either the device or the pen are going to run out of juice way before you actually are done. But then again, you need to write for 12 hours consistently for that to happen, because as soon as you are actually done writing and as soon as you connect this pen to the device, it's gonna start charging. So it's a very smart design, and I think that the overall battery capacity of both the pen and the device and how it's utilized is very, very impressive. Standby time is absolutely ridiculous, because during this month of testing and doing all of these things, I only charged it like when I received it, and then for a month I was using it, testing these things, and just kind of normally using it, even like recording audio notes during a lecture to test out how the tags work. During like a 4-hour session of recording audio notes and doing these things, it barely like spent maybe like 2 or 4% of battery life. And just prior to actually filming the material and doing the reviews here and doing the extensive battery testing, then I recharged it again, and now it's still, after all of the testing, after all of the recordings, it's still on, and let's see, and the battery is at 62% right now. So yeah, that battery life on the MatePad Paper is very, very good indeed. MatePad Paper sports a standard 10.3-inch e-ink screen with the standard 1872 by 1404 resolution, which means 227 ppi. It also has a nice kind of paper-like film on top, and it does offer a really good and adequate type of a writing feel in combination with this kind of nib on the pen that it is supplied with. That surface also lends itself really, really well for the reflectivity, and these are exceptionally high intensity lights here, and you can see how well it actually absorbs them. And here it is in combination with the Remarkable 2. So let's find one light that's there, and you can see actually that on Remarkable 2 you do get a bit more of a definition here and there. Let's switch this to gray completely as well, so that we have a equal kind of a covering thing. And it does feel they're extremely similar in performance as far as reflectivity goes, but yeah, as near as name makes no difference. So pretty much the reflectivity is as good as it is on the Remarkable 2. The distance from the tip of the marker to the writable surface, so basically distance to screen, is really quite good, and it's not as high as I normally see it on other devices. And I think that's really well done as well is the calibration of the pen itself. It really feels like there is a significant connection between the pen and the screen, and that is a good thing. As far as the image quality goes, it's actually quite nice, and especially because it's an active pen, so it doesn't have a Wacom layer or and a protective layer on top, isn't interfering with the quality of the image that much, and the reflectivity and all these things actually make for a good combination. So if you take a look at it here in detail, you can see the crispness and the detail of a very small font here, and difference in contrast, boldness, the curves themselves, and how it all works. So the readability for texts of any kind, including smaller text, is very nice. The screen whiteness is standard as on any other e-ink, so it's not darker or brighter than any of those, so that's also standard. The images as well are really nicely portrayed, and this kind of level of detail can be seen in the crispness and the sharpness and the contrast. It's all actually quite nicely portrayed on the MatePad Paper. As far as the refresh speed itself goes, you do have this kind of normal, refresh now, and smart. So if I put it to normal, for example, that's usually what you get in the situations where you have this kind of complicated thing, when you have semi-transparent dark box with a grainy image or a kind of a detailed image in the background and white text on top that's small. And that is a situation that can quickly become grainy and difficult to read on if the handling of the colors and combinations is not done right. However, on MatePad Paper, this is done very correctly, and that makes the readability of the text fairly easy. So if I do switch to smart kind of refresh speed. In the app itself, you have the brightness control, which is basically your contrast. So you can lower the contrast if you don't want it to be too high, and that clears up the image even more, and it handles the lowest contrast. I think it handles it really well as well. And the most important thing for me is, unlike with the Boox devices, you don't have that color banding, and the ghosting is not that bad at all. Now the performance is not as fast as Boox on speed refresh, for example, but the image, I think, really justifies that difference. And the Frontlight itself, you can access it by swapping down here, but you will notice a problem that whenever I try to swipe down and access these notifications, the device itself or the software is not smart enough, and it's not calibrated enough to actually not detect the page swipe as well. And that's a consistent problem no matter where you go. So that's something that definitely would need improvement. And while we're talking about the improvement, yeah, the Frontlight is not good. Not good at all. The control is not good. The Frontlight itself, it's a single light, so you don't have dual color, you don't have warm and cold, you just have that one light and that's it. And the control is, you have off as a preset, you have a day as a preset, this is it turning on just very lightly, and then night, bizarrely, is even more brighter, right? And then you have custom, which is all that you can do is basically affect the intensity in 32 steps. That icon there doesn't do anything. There's no color control at all. The uniformity is okay, but it can be better. There are definitely things that are not that good. So while on my initial impressions, I didn't mind it that much, and I still don't mind this kind of line here. And when reading, it's okay, that it almost looks like a page being kind of bent on the side. Overall, when you're writing and doing these things, it's not really that good, and it's something that's constantly present. The other thing that I don't like is that you can clearly see a white glowy line here, which is basically the covering of this white plastic is illuminated by the light, and then you have this kind of glowy outline on the sides, which is definitely a distraction, for me at least. Intensity steps are actually quite nice, so when you're in fairly dark conditions, it goes well into the minimum, so you can fine-tune it and actually read it in complete darkness without it blinding you, which is great. And it doesn't go into pointless amounts of brightness maximums, which I never understand when devices go into like complete glaring intensity, which no one ever uses for any circumstances. So you don't have that here, but that's all you got. You got your little one kind of preset. You have day and night presets that you cannot change and save, and you have an off button as well, and no color control. And the uniformity, again, it's like always doing this same thing. And the uniformity has the issues that I've mentioned. Now, it's not a terrible Frontlight. I've seen worse, definitely have seen much worse, but it is nowhere near where Kobo, for example, is, and better of the Boox devices, for example, Boox Note Air 2, Note Air 2 Plus, do have a much better and more complete Frontlight experience than the MatePad Paper. That being said, it is a functional Frontlight, but for me, when you combine this in the image here, it will look fairly white. But when you actually lower it down to a mid section, you are gonna start getting this kind of purplish coloration here. And that one is, for me, the biggest problem, because I'm never gonna keep it at super high, because that's completely pointless. So I'm gonna keep it at lower levels, and I'm going to use it in darker conditions and in darkness, for example, when we wanna go to sleep and things like that. And in those moments, you get the bluish light and the purplish light just kind of being there, and it just tints the whole color image. And it's just not neutral and not that good. So the Frontlight on the MatePad Paper is functional, but that's pretty much all it is. It lacks the dual color configuration, and it lacks the uniformity that is needed for a device like this to actually be on par with its competitors, which for the same price range, actually in some cases less, have a dramatically better Frontlight to offer.